comes to sports, I'm kind of a casual with most of them. Baseball, I can't watch baseball. It takes too long. As a kid, I played baseball. My stepdad was a AA player in the minor leagues at one time, so he'd always be the assistant coach, and I'd be like, go away, I just want to dick around, and he tried to make me take it all serious. So I never really got like super into baseball. I'll watch it very casually. Football, a little bit more serious, you know, go Giants. But basketball, that's always been my sport. Even though white man can't jump, I've always been a fan of basketball because of the fact that I grew up in the Northeast, and like, you were a Knicks fan. The Knicks were at the top of the world during that time. Obviously, they never won a chip, but, you know, the Patrick Ewing, John Starks, Charles Oakley era of Knicks basketball was cultural for the Northeast and people in the Northeast. So I was like, yo, go Knicks all day, every day. And of course, basketball video games were plentiful in that same time frame, in that early to mid 90s era. You had arcade style games like NBA Jam. You've had the emergence of more simulation style games like NBA Live, two franchises that I would always play on my Sega Genesis. Of course, you had NBA 2K, which on the Dreamcast looked like real life. That was such a huge leap from the PlayStation 1 N64 era to the Dreamcast era. And seeing these characters, it was like, bro, what is this? This is nuts. And of course, there are a bunch of different styles of basketball games, but someone who likes to play sports is our fat plumber Italian friend Mario. There's of course been Mario Strikers, Mario Baseball, Mario Golf, but one of the forgotten games in the Mario lineage of sports games is Mario Hoops 3-on-3 for the Nintendo DS, a game that I love really for two reasons. The first reason, of course, is the game itself. It is a bizarre game. You gotta remember, this during the Nintendo DS era, they were trying to do weird things with the touchscreen. And whenever Nintendo made a game, they were like, we got to focus this on the touchscreen. And it's like, why? Like, the touchscreen is cool, but it doesn't need to be the focus. Look at the Zelda games on the Nintendo DS with Phantom Hourglass and, of course, Spirit Tracks. Yeah, always had to use the touchscreen just to move around. It's like, bro, give me some buttons. Let me use some buttons. But Mario Hoops 3-on-3 used the touchscreen in a different way. You would actually use it to dribble and shoot. So you would move with the D-pad, and that would be like your primary thing. And to pass the ball or do like spin moves and stuff like that, you would use the touchscreen and do like weird swipes in different directions or different sort of swipes and interesting, you know, like angles and stuff like that to do specific things. And it was very weird because there was lots of like coins on the court. You would get on the court and you would have to tap the touchscreen and you would have to try to tap it when you're on a certain block. And like the block would give you coins and it would make your shot worth more. It was a very strange game, but it actually looked like really good, especially for a DS game. There was great use of color. You, of course, had your usual cast of Mario characters. You had your average characters who were average and like size and speed. You had characters like Donkey Kong who were stronger. You had Waluigi. Like, it was a pretty good roster of characters. And then there was the bizarre aspect of it, where there was a Final Fantasy crossover with this game, because at that time, Final Fantasy games were starting to be a thing on the DS. Basically, they were starting to like sort of redo them and re-release them on the Nintendo DS. Square Enix, or actually, was it Square Enix at that time? I don't know if it was Squaresoft or Square Enix, but Square essentially developed this game for Nintendo and Nintendo published it. So Square was like, hey, we're going to put Final Fantasy characters in this game. And I mean, they did. And it was weird, but somehow, some way, it just kind of made sense. Now, the basketball itself was okay. You know, it wasn't exactly like a realistic style, obviously. And as an arcade experience, you still felt a little bit hampered by like the controls of the game. At times, it was a little bit difficult to do what you want, but the game was rich in lots of features. There was different tournament modes and stuff. You could play in local multiplayer. It was a really good game for what it was. And I think it's one of the standout sports titles on the Nintendo DS because really there wasn't a lot of great sports games on that system. Like Tecmo Bowl was pretty good. Like Winning 11 Soccer was all right on there as well, but I think Mario Hoops 3-on-3 was like one of the better sports games and just a fun Mario experience. But like I said, there was two reasons I loved Mario Hoops 3-on-3, and it's a bit nefarious, but hey, you know, it is what it is. Now, at the time, there was a device called the Max Action Replay that you could plug into the Game Boy slot of your Nintendo DS. And essentially what this would let you do is you could put like MP3s on there. You could watch, you could like make movies that were in a compatible format on there as well. Obviously the quality wasn't all that great. You were kind of restricted by the memory card size that you had, but it was a very interesting device and one that I owned because it was only like $30. But it was quick to find out that you could actually attain games from it from a different sort of way. Essentially, it was also a way to play games that you probably shouldn't have had on your system, but you needed a donor cartridge. Each Nintendo DS cartridge had its own individual size, much like you have with the Nintendo Switch. You have like 2 GB, 4 GB, so on and so forth. So some games were of a higher size than other games. So in order to play every single game, you had to have a specific game that was the bigger file size. Well, luckily, Mario Hoops 3-on-3 happened to be one of the bigger file sizes on the Nintendo DS. So with that donor cartridge, it would essentially trick the Nintendo DS into thinking that that game was what was in the cartridge slot, when in actuality, I mean, it wasn't. It was on the memory card. So this opened up the world of Nintendo DS. You gotta remember, bro, this was like, you know, late 2000s, and I felt like a freaking hacker, man. I was like, I'm so ahead of the curve. This is so awesome. I still bought a ton of DS games, but it was just an interesting thing to do. And the fact that Mario Hoops 3-on-3 was like the best game to have as a donor cartridge as well was just great. Like, it allowed me to check out all these other DS games. And then, you know, if I really liked the game, I would end up purchasing it. I know I'm a terrible person. I pirated some Nintendo DS games back in the day. I could be the reason that the Nintendo DS completely failed. Oh, wait. Very successful. Sold a lot of software, too. Don't blame me. Blame yourself. So those are my thoughts and memories on Mario Hoops 3-on-3. Definitely a game worth checking out today. You know, if you've never played it and you're a fan of Mario sports games, or you're just a basketball fan in general, it's got an interesting version of basketball in it. You know, very over the top. You have the items as well. I didn't even talk about the items. Sorry, but there's like items that you can do, like shells and stuff like that to knock into people. There's super dunks as well. I did a terrible job of describing the game because really, like, I loved the game and I played the game a lot, but I loved it for the donor cartridge aspect of it. But you can do like super dunks and stuff where you go up for a dunk and then like you'd hit like different angles on the screen to make it like a super dunk to give you more power so that the opposition couldn't block it. I'm sorry, I did a terrible job of describing this game, but it was cool because it was like the first time I got into like, you know, emulating stuff and, you know, like figuring out as far as, you know, doing it on my own and like being sort of in the grassroots of it. It was very cool, man. It was a very interesting time period and a very interesting device that I'm surprised Nintendo didn't, I guess because it wasn't the primary function of it. You know, Nintendo didn't do anything about it. But let me know if you ever played Mario Hoops 3-on-3. Sorry that I did a terrible job of describing the game, but I think I did a good job of talking about how you would basically get more Nintendo DS games out of it. And as always, thank you for joining me on The Stash. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.